Let's welcome in our next guest. He is the man who will be making his UFC debut in April against Ross Pearson. He is Ryan Couture. Ryan, how are you?
Doing great. How are you?
Great to have you on the show, Ryan. Thanks so much for stopping by. A lot of people, when this fight was announced, were like, wow, Ross Pearson, they're throwing him to the wolves. Well, what was your reaction?
I mean, I just fought KJ Noon, so I don't feel like it's that huge of a jump from that fight, and I'm excited about it. I have a lot of respect for Ross. I always like watching him fight, so looking forward to getting in there and tangling with him.
So this wasn't a surprise. This was the kind of opponent, as far as talent level goes, that you were expecting.
Yeah, I had a feeling that they haven't given me an easy fight in maybe ever. So I had a feeling it'd be somebody tough, and it's an interesting progression of what we've had to work on for the last couple of opponents. I've been fighting pretty consistently heavy-handed, dangerous strikers, and this is just another evolution of that process. So I think it'll be fun, continuation of the things I've been trying to build on in training, and I think we're going to put on a hell of a show.
Are you surprised that you're not fighting in Las Vegas?
I was sort of hoping I'd end up maybe on that tough finale the following weekend, just because it's always easier to fight at home than it is to travel, but I'm also really excited to go see Sweden. So, fair trade either way.
So now that you're a member of the UFC, now that, you're coming off that win, I mean, anything changed in the life of Ryan Couture? Or is this kind of a, same old, same old? I don't know if you know this, you're going to make history when you fight in April. You'll be the first son of a UFC fighter to fight in the UFC.
I think that's kind of cool and exciting, but really, as far as my day-to-day life goes, not much has changed. The next fight got announced a lot quicker than it probably would have if we were still doing the Strikeforce thing. But beyond that, it's still the same game. So I'm excited. You're
cool to be more active. Do you want to fight more than maybe that you were getting in in Strikeforce?
Yeah, I mean, those long breaks are sort of a blessing because you have a chance to really learn a lot of new things and improve if you use your time wisely. But it's always nice to be getting a paycheck more consistently. So I'm excited to stay more active and just really keep progressing and stepping things up.
Can you tell us, and I'm sure you knew this was coming, can you tell us about this phone call that you got from Dana White asking you if you wanted your release from the UFC after everything that happened between him and your father?
Yeah, it was kind of a surreal experience and unexpected, but I had been sort of wondering where I would land in the midst of all of the issues that were going on between Dad and Dana, and so I appreciate that he, showed me that he cared enough to call and kind of let me know exactly what his take was on the situation. So, obviously it's good to know I have a home in the UFC, and I'm happy to be there, and I definitely wasn't hoping to be released, and I feel like it's been a long process, and I've worked hard to get there, and really want to make a go at it and try and be successful there. So I'm happy to know that I'll have that opportunity, and the flip side of that being that the Dad's not welcome in the corner is unfortunate, and I'm not, that's definitely a loss both personally and professionally, but we'll do what we got to do there. The UFC is where I want to be, and if that's what it takes, then I can work with it.
Will he even apply to get a cornerman's license, or after Dana said that, will he not even try?
I think most likely we'll just go along because it's just I don't want to be fighting with them. I don't want to. I don't want to burn up that goodwill that was extended my way, and I think, especially for the first fight out of the gate, it'd be best not to have the other issues that would come along with picking that fight, I think. And, I think Dad's schedule may not even permit him to make that trip. So it may be a non-issue anyway.
And in your corner, I mean, who is the head coach, if you will? I mean, is this a massive, massive loss? I mean, it's not just a coach, it's your father at the end of the day, and to boot, one of the greatest of all time. But, are you losing your head coach here, or are you able to replace him as best as possible?
Well, I mean, the guys that I spend the most time with in the gym are Tim Lane on my kickboxing and Neil Melanson on my ground game. So they're both still going to be there. And really, we've always just sort of played it, depending on how the fight's going, is who steps up and does most of the talking. So it's still going to be that. If I'm in a stand-up fight, then Tim's going to be giving me pointers and telling me what adjustments to make. And if it's a ground battle, then Neil's going to be doing that. So, not a ton changes in that regard, but definitely I'll notice that his voice is absent. Obviously, him being my father, it's the one that comes through the clearest, and that I usually am able to tune into the best. So that'll be something that I'll have to adjust to. But I think I'll be fine.
Has he been in your corner for every one of your pro fights?
Yeah, he has.
Okay, and I mean, did you have a conversation with him before all this happened? Did he even run it by you like this could happen? Are you okay with it, or did you find out maybe after the fact? I mean, how big of a part of the discussion were you?
I mean, I was training for a fight, and he didn't want to interfere with that. And I also don't know how much he would have been able to talk about as far as his contracts were concerned and everything. So I knew very little. Most of what I even still know about it came from the press release that they did and all of that. So he just sort of gave me a heads up that some things were changing for him, and it could make things interesting, and just wanted me to know that he was going to do everything he could to keep me out of it and keep me from being involved. And beyond that, I was just focused on getting ready to fight, and then everything sort of happened quickly after that. But I think that he definitely, that was on his mind, and that he was trying his best to look out for me while still doing the things that he felt like he needed to do. So, he and I are good with I think he knew there'd be some consequences, and we're going to just make the best of it.
Initially, did you think you would get released?
I didn't really know. I wasn't sure. I really felt like that would have been pretty drastic, and that there was no reason for that, because it genuinely does have nothing to do with me. It's an issue between Dad and the UFC, and it should stay that way. So that would have come as a shock if I had just been cut off and not been given the opportunity. But I really didn't know what was coming my way.
And I mean, the story that Dana told us about this. Did you see that clip when he kind of recounted the conversation that he had with you? I guess it was like a day or so before that press conference. Have you seen it? And I'm wondering, is it how it all went down? Was it an accurate story?
I read a write-up of the press conference that glossed over it, and it sounded pretty close to how I remember it. I mean, like I said, the whole thing was sort of surreal and sort of a blur, and I think that entire phone conversation lasted 2 minutes.
Oh, wow.
But I was emphatic about the fact that the UFC was where I wanted to be, and he said, okay, we're happy to have you if that's where you want to be, and just he let me know after that was settled that Dad's not welcome at events, and I said he's still going to be a part of my training team, and I think it didn't fully. The implications of what we were talking about didn't fully set in until after we hung up, but Dana understands that Dad's my dad, and he's also a part of my training team, and that's not going to change. And then the issue about cornering, I guess, kind of settled in after the fact, but it is what it is.
Did you even think about it? Did you have to sit there and think, maybe I'm going to say thanks but no thanks, or is this 100% you wanted to be in the UFC no matter what?
No, I wanted to be in the UFC no matter what. That my mind was made up on that before he ever called.
Did you think you'd get to the UFC this quickly?
No, absolutely not. This is all the last, really the steps up that I've taken over the last 4 fights have all way exceeded what I would have thought my sort of progression would be in the sport, and I'm really pleased with it. It's sort of lit a fire under me and been a great challenge that I feel like I've really risen to. But definitely wasn't, if you'd asked me a year and a half, 2 years ago, how I saw my career unfolding, it's definitely going a lot faster than I expected.
Did you expect to one day make it to the UFC?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, because some people, I don't know, maybe they don't think that they're good enough. But at the end of the day, you have that famous last name, you have that bullseye on your back. It seems like throughout your entire career thus far, you've had a bullseye. Now you kind of have this other bullseye because of the issue between Dana and Randy. Do you feel like you have now maybe 2 bullseyes? Like, there are some people who do believe that the UFC is trying to, quote unquote, weed you out, put you up there against tough guys and get rid of you. Do you feel that way?
No, not at all. I think if that's what they were trying to do, they would have matched me up differently than they did. And I feel like, not in any way to say that Ross is an easy matchup. He's not. He's a dangerous guy. He's very, very tough and I've been a fan of his for a long time. But I feel like just with the progression that I've been on, he's a logical next step. And you know, I'm going to have to work my butt off to rise to yet another challenge, but I know I'm capable of doing it.
I saw that Ross tweeted today that his training camp started today. When does yours start?
I had a long weekend planned to California, so as soon as I get back, I'll be back in the gym, and that'll be tomorrow.
True or false? You were at Disneyland today or yesterday?
Yesterday and the day before, I was at Disneyland, yes.
2 days at Disneyland. You couldn't squeeze it all into one day?
Just took our time and had some different friends that were joining us on the 2 different days, so split it up.
Was this an adult trip or were there kids involved as well?
Adult trip.
Wow.
My kids, though.
An adult trip to Disneyland.
Yeah, we had a good time.
Wow, that's amazing. You know, I'm actually kind of jealous. You would recommend this?
Absolutely. Go do it sometime.
Really? What was the highlight of the trip?
I don't know. That's a tough call. It was all fun, and it just was hanging out with good people, so that was the more important part for me.
That is very true. That's always a good thing. Now, a couple more questions, and we'll let you go. And we appreciate the time very much, Ryan. You know, again, going back to the situation with your dad for a second, will you even try to convince the UFC to change things, or are you done with this?
You know, I think maybe it's something that we could talk about down the line after things sort of calm down and settle in. But you know, like I said, I don't want to end up making a big fight out of it. I'd rather stay focused on training and on fighting, and you know, that's what's important to me at the end of the day is that I get to fight and compete, and the more I can minimize anything extraneous to that that's going to distract from it, the better. So, you know, if we can have a conversation about it and sort of plead our case for maybe making a change down the line, then I would like that, but I'm not going to hold my breath.
Have you watched your fight against KJ Noon since it obviously happened a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, I have. I watched it. It took me a couple weeks to track it down, but I did watch it the other day.
Track it down? They couldn't give you a tape?
I didn't want to bother anybody.
Man, you're too polite. You're a UFC fighter now. You got to ask for things. Anyway, the point was of the original question. Do you still think you deserve to win that fight?
I still think it was a very close fight, and I think the decision was justified. Yes.
Okay, how much heat did you get for that? Because it seemed like a lot of people were up in arms about it.
I didn't see too terribly much of that, and the people whose opinions matter to me all were on my side. So, you know, I knew as soon as the fight ended, even though, you know, when you just came through a hard fight like that, you're never too sure of anything, or at least I'm not. But I knew the fact that my dad and Neil and Tim were all saying, you know, you won the first, you won the third, and this is why, you know, those guys don't BS me. So, you know, if they felt like I lost, then they would have told me so. So I was confident in their opinions that the decision was right. Did
you watch Ross's last fight at 155, which was, of course, his return to 145?
I did, yeah, against George. That was a great fight. He looked awesome in that fight, and a ton of respect for George as well. So I know I've got my hands full.
Is it fair to say he's better at 155 than he is at 145, based on what you've seen?
Yeah, I think maybe that weight cut takes a little too much out of him. He's huge for 145. He's a good size lightweight, and I think that's probably the difference between the two weight classes for him.
All right. Well, I look forward to it. By the way, is it on the main card or is it on the undercard? They haven't really announced that. Do you know?
I don't know for sure. Fingers crossed. Hopefully it'll be on the main card. That'd be awesome.
That will be awesome. In any event, history will be made when you do fight Ross Pearson in April. It will be the first time, as I mentioned, that the son of a UFC fighter, not just a UFC fighter, one of the greatest of all time, UFC Hall of Famer Randy Couture, his son Ryan Couture, will be fighting Ross Pearson. That is a UFC first. We can't wait for it. Appreciate the time, Ryan. I know some of the questions not as favorable as others, but I know it's a family thing. But I appreciate the time and the candor, and I wish you the best of luck as you prepare for Ross Pearson coming up in April.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on. It's always good talking to you, Ariel.
All right, there he is. Ryan Couture stopping by from California. He was in Disneyland, and he makes his way back to Las Vegas tomorrow, as he said, and he prepares in the next, 7 or so weeks for Ross Pearson, which is shaping up to be those Fuel TV cards, I must say. Not just because I work for Fuel TV, by the way. They are shaping up to be some amazing cards. UFC on Fuel TV 7, UFC on Fuel TV 8 in Japan. Brian Stand versus Vanderlei Silva. That's a great one. Mark Hunt versus Stefan Struve. And then number 9, Gustafsson versus Musasi. I mean, geez, those are some amazing cards. The next one is this Saturday, as I keep reminding you. Okay, in a minute, we'll be joined by Bjorn Rebney. I think we figured out the issue with him. Lots to talk to the Bellator CEO about. They had a show this past Thursday. They've got another one coming up this coming Thursday, and it is Bellator 89. Although they don't really use the numbers anymore. This one going down at the Bojangles Coliseum. Remember that place? That's where Roy Nelson fought Stefan Struve, and the lights went out, like in the Super Bowl. The Bojangles Coliseum in Charlotte, North Carolina. Eduardo Dantas versus Marcus Galvão for the bantamweight title. It's the first time we see Eduardo Dantas. Is it the first time we see Eduardo Dantas since he was knocked out by Tyson Nam? He was knocked out by Tyson Nam. Let me check. That's right. It is the first time we've seen Eduardo Dantas. Won the Bellator title over Zach Makovsky in April, then lost to Tyson Nam in August. Oh. Okay. Tell me to sit down. How's this? Better? Yes. Okay. My noggin getting cut off at the top. Anyway, so he's coming back. He's fighting Marcus Galvão. Also, Dan Kramer versus Brian Rogers. It's the start of the middleweight tournament. One thing I don't like, they shouldn't put the first round middleweight fights on the undercard because you want to see these guys. You want to get invested in them. One of the fights is on the undercard. Doug Marshall fighting Andreas Spang. That's an interesting fight. Brett Cooper also on the card. So that kicks off at 10 p.m. Eastern on Spike TV. At 8 p.m. Eastern, you've got the undercard on SpikeTV.com. Any interesting fights on that one? Any interesting names? No one that really jumps out at me. You can watch those on SpikeTV.com, and then 10 o'clock, the main card. After Bjorn Rebney, we'll be talking to Uriah Hall. He had the knockout heard round the world on The Ultimate Fighter last week. An amazing knockout. And then we'll round out the show with Dennis Bermudez as he prepares for Matt Grice at UFC 157.